All right. What's up, Arizona StuMo? Good to see you guys tonight. Hey, if you guys weren't here the first week, I'm the director of Arizona StuMo, and I'm so excited that you guys are here tonight. There's a lot of reasons for that, but if this is your first night here at Arizona StuMo Late Night, here's what we do. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m., we get together, we have some free food. Hopefully you cashed in on some of that. We give about a 20 to 25 minute talk on growing in your leadership and your faith, and then we get out of here. So if you're new here tonight, all I would ask of you is to sit back, relax, enjoy the talk, get some Chick-fil-A, and hopefully meet some of these awesome people in this room right now. So we're glad you're here tonight. Guys, it's a great night, and I want to take you back to a time where I was risking for love, okay? Not just any love, true love, like love that, you know, it's a serious relationship, something that's more than just the surface level, something that's more extraordinary than probably anything you could ever imagine. I was risking for love in third grade. Third grade, I just moved from Texas to Washington, D.C., and so it's a big culture shock for me, moving from small town Texas to D.C., and I get up there, and one thing I start to realize is that there are sophisticated women in Washington, D.C. In third grade, I'm looking around like, man, these girls know math, they know how to read. In small town Texas, we didn't do that stuff. Man, these girls are impressive. And there was one girl that caught my eye more than any other girl in the school. Her name was Chelsea. And here's the deal. Chelsea was in fourth grade. I know. I know.
Well done.
So, yeah, just wait, man, just wait. Chelsea's in fourth grade, and she lives in my neighborhood. So I see Chelsea all the time. We ride the bus together, we're at school together. I see her walk across the playground all the time, and I'm thinking, man, how do I make that first move, man? How do I introduce myself to Chelsea? She seems amazing, but I can't figure it out. One of the things that was different between Texas and Washington, D.C. is it snowed a ton. And so whenever it would snow, all the neighborhood kids would get together. In our neighborhood, we would play, we would sled, all that stuff. And one day, I mean, it was just a huge blizzard. And so we get about 2 feet of snow up in DC, and all the kids are playing together, all their parents are in the back, and I'm down there, I'm having a great time playing in the snow. And lo and behold, Chelsea walks up. I'm thinking to myself, it's time. It's time to make my move. I've got to do something. I've got to make this thing count. And so I'm like, how am I gonna make that first move? I'm like, do I just go up to her and say, hey, my name is Jake? I'm like, no, that's too direct. Do I go like introduce myself to her parents? No, it's too formal for that first touch. I'm like, okay, third grade, what do you do? Okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make a snowball and I'm gonna throw it at Chelsea. It's a foolproof plan. So I get my snowball, I pack it tight, right? I played a couple years of baseball, so I'm feeling really good about my arm. I cock back with my snowball. There's Chelsea. She's probably like 10 feet away. It's not that big of a throw. I feel good about it. I throw it, miss her by 10 feet. I'm a little disappointed by that, but she sees the snowball, and she turns towards me. I'm like, oh, Chelsea. She's got that glint in her eye, and I'm like, I don't know. Maybe she was impressed, you know, with the old cannon here. I don't know what was going on, but she's got that glint in her eye, and she starts to walk towards me. I'm like, oh, well, what's my question gonna be? I was like, you know, am I gonna say like, do you come here often, or you like the snow? You know, like I wasn't working it out, and she was walking towards me. She comes right up to me, and she picks me up off the ground. I'm like, she's physical, okay? She slams me into the ground. She starts picking up my head and slamming it into the snow over and over and over again. I've got glasses. They're broken. She's slamming my head into the snow. She's packing my coat with snow, and she's just pummeling me with her fists. Not how I thought our first date would go. I thought things would get better from that point. But man, in that moment, I knew that I had risked for something important, and I had lost, right? I hadn't made it. Man, me and Chelsea, you know, we had a rocky start. In fact, here's a picture of us right here. Check this out. You can probably guess who I am, okay? Guy in the middle there. Let's get that going. You can guess who Chelsea is, maybe, okay? She's the one right there. And the reason you can tell who she is because of my defensive posture, right? Right there. Check that out. Okay. That's us a year later, people. That's trauma right there. Man, I had risked for something I loved. You know, I love Chelsea. I'd risk for someone I love. And the thing is, everybody in this room risks for the things they love. Everybody does. Whether that's your family or your passions or the things that you truly love. That's how you can tell what someone really loves, by what they risk for. That's how you can see in someone's life. If you can see someone risking for something, making something happen because of something they love, you can tell that they love that thing. One thing that we talk about often at StuMo, every single week here at Late Night, is we talk about growing in our faith. Man, we're talking about how to grow in your relationship with God, how to grow in your relationship with Jesus, how to do those things that we talk about. And I know many of you in this room love your faith. Man, you love God, you love Jesus. But here's the deal. When we talk about faith, man, one thing that's hard to risk on a college campus is faith. It's tough to take risks in your faith. I remember getting to my college my freshman year, and I knew that, even after I joined my fraternity and I was getting to know these guys, I knew I could talk about pretty much anything I wanted, but there was one line that we just didn't cross, and I couldn't figure it out, but it was our faith. We never talked about our faith. In fact, sometimes it felt like, man, to bring up my faith, to be someone who lives out my faith in college, man, that's too risky. Man, that's a line that's too big to cross. I don't think I should do that. I think inherently we know that faith is worth risking for. Man, worth making something important in our life, something that we invest in, something that we're open about in our lives. But in college, it can be so hard to do that. You know what I love the Bible? I love the Bible because it's got people who are just like us. And when we're thinking about people who are struggling to risk for their faith, people who are struggling to make big decisions that way, there's people in the Bible we can read about. It's not a book about perfect people. It's a book about people that have problems that we can relate to. And one guy I love in the Bible, he's an amazing guy. His name was Peter. And Peter was an incredible guy who loved Jesus and made some big, big mistakes. And so here's what you got to know about Peter. Peter was a guy, just a normal guy, but he was a fisherman. And so back in those days, it was a really important economic role to be a fisherman. Man, you were providing for your community. Oftentimes, you were a leader in your community. That's who he was. He was a hard-working leader in his community. He reminds me of so many of you guys in this room, just great, solid leaders on this campus. He was genuine. He was loving. And the thing I love about Peter the most is that he made tons of mistakes. Like, you watch his life, and he's making mistake after mistake after mistake. And as I read about his life, I'm like, this is a guy I can relate to and I can learn from. And there's this crucial moment in the Bible, in this interaction between Jesus and Peter, when things really go south for a second. Man, he really makes a big mistake. And I think we can learn a lot about risk from that moment. And so here's what's going on. Jesus has big crowds, right? He's got lots of people. He's teaching. He's investing in these people. He's going around making sure that these people are growing in their faith. And so there's tons of people. And he gathers these people together, and he asks them a question. And this is the question that he asks them. It's this: who do people say the Son of Man is? They replied, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others say Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And so here's what's going on. Jesus has this big crowd, and generally he throws out this question to the crowd, and he says, who do people say that I am? And he's getting all these different answers from people in the crowd. It's not necessarily what they believe, but they're throwing out, here's what people are saying about you. Some people are saying you're an important teacher. Some people are saying you're a prophet, like a special chosen person by God. Some people are saying other things about you. And so people have all these different opinions about who Jesus is. When I think about this today, I think about college football. I think about the off season. Man, and the only thing that people could talk about in the off season in college football was the University of Colorado. For Deion Sanders and Coach Prime, man, all people could talk about was Coach Prime. And here's the thing they were asking. They were saying, who is Deion Sanders? Is he a good coach? Is he someone who can actually recruit? Does he know how to bring a team together? And it was all the sports channels could talk about was, who is this guy? Is he going to be a success? We had College Game Day, like one of the biggest college football programs, in a game between Colorado and Colorado State. I can't remember the last time I thought about Colorado State. Yet there we were. People were intrigued by Coach Prime. Man, people in Jesus' day, they were intrigued by him. They're like, who is this guy? People had all different kinds of opinions. They're like, is he the real deal? And so people have all these answers about Jesus. Who is he? And then Jesus does something that I love. He makes them take a personal stance on what they believe. And he asks another question. And this is what he asks. He says, but what about you? Who do you say that I am? It's one of the reasons I love Jesus. He makes people make decisions. He makes people come to a stance on what they believe. And what he's doing with his followers there is he's trying to get them to go public. He's trying to get them to take a risk for their faith. And he asks them the question, who do you say that I am? This is a really important question. And I think it's one that, we should even discuss. And so I want to discuss for a second, who do you guys think Jesus is? And how would you describe him if he asked you this question? Go ahead and discuss for a couple seconds. A lot of you guys probably said similar things. A lot of you guys are thinking, well, everyone knows who Jesus is. Well, in this time, it was controversial. Man, to make a statement and make a stance on who Jesus was, that was taking a big risk. And so Jesus asked this question to those people who are following, that big crowd that's following him. And these people, they're not exactly like jumping out to answer the question. They're not exactly like going there to make a stance on who Jesus is, and they're kind of looking around like who's going to answer. But then our boy Peter steps up. He's bold, he's taking a risk, and this is what he says. He says this, Simon Peter answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. The people around him are like, whoa, man, that is a bold statement. Like, we're talking about him being a teacher. We're talking about him being a prophet. That's okay. Like, that's socially acceptable. But you're saying he's God. Man, that is risky for you to take that stance. But Peter steps out and he says, you're the Son of God. You're God, and I know that you're God. He comes to a great conclusion. And this might be a conclusion that many of you guys have come to over the last couple of weeks, just coming to StuMo or talking to your friends. Man, maybe some of you guys are thinking to yourself, man, Jesus is the Son of God. If you were here last week and you heard Dane's talk, maybe you realize that Jesus is unique and he's offering something that only he can. And you want to take that and you believe the same thing that Peter is saying about Jesus. Well, Jesus hears this answer from Peter. And he congratulates him. He goes, Peter, that's incredible. And it's true. But then we have a big problem. This is what it says. It says, from that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed on the third day and be raised to life. And so Peter has made this huge stance on who Jesus is. And then Jesus starts going off and he starts telling the people following him that he's going to have to suffer, that he's going to have to go through a lot of hard things, and that eventually he's going to be killed. And so Peter hears this. And Peter's a leader. And he's thinking, Jesus, like, man, this is a flawed plan. And you can kind of imagine him like taking Jesus aside, like pulling him away from the people real quick and taking him aside. And this is what he says. He says, never, Lord, never, never, Lord. He said, this shall never happen to you. And basically what he's saying is, this will never happen to you. Jesus, you're not going to die. Like, Jesus, we have a great thing going on, man. Like, we got all these people. Like, we have respect. We have prestige. People like us. People even think we're kind of cool. Like, man, this thing's going great. And then you're going to say this stuff? Like, you're going to suffer and you're going to die? Man, that's never going to happen to you, Jesus. Let's not talk about it. Here's the thing. Peter believed that Jesus was God. But Peter's definition of Jesus and who he is didn't include suffering. It didn't include hard things. It definitely didn't include death. Does your definition of Jesus include those things? Maybe you've thought about risking for your faith, like stepping out and being bold with your faith and taking that next step, but maybe you feel the pull of that thing, that maybe if you do that, you might suffer, or there might be hard things that come your way. People might not like you, or people might have questions about you or avoid you. When I first started following Jesus for the first time in my life, it was my freshman year, and I had these guys helping me to grow to know God, and I was going to StuMo, and I was learning so much about my faith I was so excited about, but there's this one guy in my life, and he just made it his mission to convince me that what I was doing was stupid. I mean, he must have had tons of time on his hands, because like everything I did, he would take me aside and be like, Jake, you don't have to walk with Jesus that way. Man, that's different. That's bad, man. That's going to cause suffering in your life. Or Jake, you don't have to do that thing because, man, that's going to get you like bad PR, man. People aren't going to like you with that thing. And he made it his mission to do that. And it made me start to question, am I doing the wrong thing? Should I be risking for this? Well, Jesus' response to Peter, it's kind of intense. Like, it's one of the most intense things you see Jesus actually say to someone in the Bible. And this is what he says. He looks at Peter as he's taking him aside and saying this, and this is what he says to him. He says, "Get behind me, Satan." He says, "You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." And this is what he's saying to Peter, is get out of here, man. You're not thinking about the things of God. You're only thinking about yourself. You're only thinking about your life. You're only thinking about the here and now. Man, I'm talking about the things of God, and you are only concerned about yourself. Man, I don't care who you are. Like, if you're hanging out with Jesus and he calls you Satan, it's just a bad day, right? Like, we can pack it up. We can go home. That's not a good day. But, man, Jesus cares about this so much, this idea of risking and taking steps of faith for him, that, man, he has this strong language for Peter saying, hey, man, you got to fix your view. You got to get your mindset on the things of God. And then he looks at all the people in the crowd. He looks at all of them, and he says this to his people following him. He says, whoever wants to be my disciples must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. So Jesus starts to lay out the ground rules for what it looks like to actually follow him. He says to the people, man, if you want to be someone who follows me, if you want to be those people, man, you have to deny yourself. You have to say no to you. And on top of that, you have to take up your cross and follow me. And basically what he's saying is, man, you got to prepare yourself, because if you're going to follow me, man, there might be hard things that come your way. You might have to risk something. You might go through something hard, because that's what I'm about to do. The idea of denying yourself, man, it's a hard thing to do. Have you guys ever tried to deny yourself anything? I mean, of course you guys have. I try a lot of different things in life, and one of the things that someone started talking to me about was this idea of fasting. And so intermittent fasting, stuff like that. And so I'm not the kind of person who's like, okay, I'll try half a day. Someone told me I should do 10 days. And I was like, okay, I'll do 10 days fasting, just straight. I'll do it right now. So I was like, I'm going to deny myself for 10 days. And so I go into this fast, day one, you have all your stuff ready. You got water, you're drinking vegetable broth, all this different stuff. And you're like, man, this is great. So many health benefits, boosting the testosterone, HGH for my lifts, all that different stuff. It's going to be awesome, man. This is going to be great. Well, day 2 rolls around, you hate your life. Day 3 rolls around, you start hallucinating, seeing visions, all that different stuff. I didn't make it past day 3, right? Man, denying myself is hard. Man, denying myself and saying no to me is a hard thing to do. And if you're going to be Jesus' followers, you might have to do the same thing. Say no to yourself. I have to do it often. It's hard for me. And here's the question I want you guys to ask tonight. I want you guys to actually wrestle with this question and think about this question today and maybe this week is, why would anybody choose to do that? Why would anyone choose to risk or suffer or do hard things in the name of their faith, in the name of trying to follow Jesus? Man, why would anyone try to do that? I try to actively avoid suffering and hard things in my life. Why would anyone actually practice Jesus' words that he gives us right here? The great news is Jesus gives us an answer. He keeps going as he's telling these people what it's going to be like for them and what it's going to take to follow him. He says this. He says something so true, and he gives us the answer to that question. Why would anyone do this? And this is what he says. He says, for whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? Man, great words. And here's the thing Jesus does, is Jesus gives us a couple math equations. He starts to break it down for us. Man, why is it worth it to risk? Why is it worth it to suffer? Why is it worth it to take some bold stance for Jesus? And he gives us a couple reasons and ways we can make sense of why anyone would do this. And the first thing he says is this: if you try to save your life, you'll lose it. What he's saying there is that people who try to manage their life, to center their life all around them, who live life for themselves and only make decisions in light of that and getting more for themselves and things like that, man, eventually those people lose the very thing that they're aiming for. The satisfying life, the purposeful life that they're aiming for, it just becomes small. It becomes meaningless, and they lose their life. And then Jesus gives us another line. He says, losing your life for Jesus' sake equals finding it. Man, if you live a life where you're willing to step out and follow Jesus and be bold and risk for him, man, you might just find something incredible. You might find something so satisfying, man, so purposeful, so adventurous that, man, your life expands to a way that you could never imagine in your life. You might find real life. And then he asks the question, what's worth more than your soul? And he tells us this, that your soul is greater. It's worth more than everything. What your soul is, man, it's worth more than everything. And you should live life to reflect that reality. And here's what I would say tonight is that, man, when we are struggling to risk or take big steps in our faith or step out and be bold in our faith, sometimes what I think we're doing is we're settling for less. And that's what Jesus is trying to get us to see. There was this brilliant philosopher. His name was Clive. And Clive was a man who wasn't someone who grew up in the church. He wasn't someone who even grew up religious. In fact, he made fun of religious people. He made fun of Christians. He made fun of anybody who embraced religion. And so he's growing up, and he's doing these things. And eventually, he runs into the real Jesus and realizes that, man, Jesus is real. Man, he is amazing, and he's calling me to this adventurous life. And as he was starting to wrestle with this question of, like, why don't people risk for Jesus? Why don't people take out big steps and make bold stances for Jesus? This is what he said. He said this. This is an amazing quote. It would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us. Like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by an offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. He's saying one of the reasons we don't take these steps of faith, these risks for Jesus, is because we're too easily pleased. We don't want the most out of life. We don't want to see life at its fullest. And he's saying, man, we got to look outside of that. I like to think of it like this. So there's different dorms and places you can live at the University of Arizona. You guys know this. I was pulling some people on, like, okay, what's the worst dorm at Arizona? Anybody got any guess? Can I get some? Apache? Cochise, Coronado. Man, it seems like everywhere is pretty bad. I've heard like every dorm. This is good. This is good. Well, guys, I did a lot of research. I crunched the numbers. I looked at pictures, and I still don't know how to pronounce it. But the worst dorm, I think, at the University of Arizona, based on my research, is Hopi? So is it Hopi? Yeah. Okay, let's go back one. This is Hopi. Right there. That's what you can look forward to in your University of Arizona experience if you live there. Man, you've got a mattress from the 60s with the imprint of the person from last year still in it. Like, it's an amazing addition you can look forward to. Not only that, you have air conditioning, a $20 air conditioner you can look forward to, and they really highlight this nice recycling bin down here in case you're really wanting something extra special. There's other places you can live in Tucson, right? There's Olive, right? You can live in Olive. Anyone live in Olive? Okay, we got a couple people. Olive. I can't speak. But man, look at this. This is like I think this is the penthouse in Olive, however you say it. Man, that is like 10 times the size of your entire room in that dorm. And I like to think of it like this. Like, imagine you're living in this, right? Did anyone live there? No one in this room lived there. For good reason, man. Imagine you're living there, okay? Someone knocks on your door and they say, hey, good news. Man, I've got a great upgrade for you. We're gonna let you live here. And you're like, okay, like, what's the catch? Like, there's no catch. Like, it's free. You can do this if you'll just leave. Imagine if you heard that and you looked at the person offering it. It was legit, like, it's a real opportunity. And you said to him, oh, well, man, I just kind of like my mattress. I don't think I can do that. This recycling bin, man, have you seen this recycling bin? Man, you can put so many things in here to recycle. That's what you do with it, right? This air conditioner, man, it's not central, but it gets the job done. I think I'm gonna pass. Like, I don't really see the value in this whole deal. Would anyone do that? No. Absolutely not. Sometimes we're far too easily pleased with life when maybe there's something greater out there. Maybe there's something incredible that we're missing. Maybe we're so happy with our mattress and our recycling bin and the small closet and the old air conditioner that, man, we're just so comfortable in that situation that we never look outside of it to think, is there something greater that's offered? Man, there is. There is. Following Jesus is hard. He says it himself. It requires risk, suffering, hardship sometimes, but the payout is more than you can ever imagine. It's amazing. Don't settle for the mud pie. Live the ultimate life in following Jesus. Be bold. Take a risk. And how can we do that? What are some things we could do to challenge ourselves in our walk with God? Some risks we could take, man, to impact the world, to elevate our spiritual life and walk with Jesus in a way that we never had before. I just want to give you guys a couple of different risks that you could take depending on where you're at in the room. They're not for everybody, but I think these might have something in common with you. And the first thing I would say, one risk that you could easily take is to just fly your flag. What do I mean by that? I mean, just to identify publicly with Jesus. It doesn't mean stand on the corner with a megaphone and like yell at people or do anything like that, but man, just publicly like acknowledge that you're a Christ follower. Man, you're someone who is committed to that. You're someone who wants to grow in that. You're not perfect. You know, you're not making all the right decisions. That's not what that means. It means you're far from perfect. But man, just identifying publicly and saying, hey, that's who I am. I'm trying to live that life. Maybe that's the step for you. And if that's the step for you, man, that's incredible. I love that. Another step you can take is just try following Jesus' commands. And don't make it complicated. You can start with one of the commands that he gave right here. Matthew 16:24 says this. Then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone will come after me, let him deny himself. Take up his cross daily and follow me. Man, what's one way you could deny yourself this week in honor of just trying to follow Jesus? Like what's one area of your life you could say no to about your life in order to follow Christ? It could be, man, spending time with God in the morning, like getting up an extra 15 minutes to try reading some of the Bible, like Blake was talking about 2 weeks ago. It could be as simple as that. I mean, it could be saying no to something you know is pulling you away from God in order to pursue Jesus. It could be telling someone about Jesus. It could be trying to be generous in a way that maybe costs you something, like, man, helping someone, serving someone in a way that costs you something. How can you say no to yourself? Try following one of Jesus' commands. It's a great way to do it. And another thing you can do is take a bold step to grow spiritually. Do something that you know is going to help you grow spiritually. Take a bold step. If that's you, man, I want to challenge you guys to do something like that. Man, get into that Bible study that you know you should go to. Like, just check it out. Go to it. If so that person is trying to, like, initiate with you and help you grow spiritually, man, don't just be the person who responds and says, yeah, I can do it, man. Be the person who initiates. When the person says, hey, when are we doing it? When are we going to do this thing together? Go to Kaleo. It's something we do in the summers, man. Check out S&C. I think it's a great thing that we do. Man, we love StuMo Conference. You guys heard a little bit about it last week, and I want you guys to hear about it from one of my good friends, Natalie. Hear her experience at S&C. Give it up for Natalie.
Hey y'all, how are we doing? Like Jake said, my name is Natalie, and if you're anything like me, you like to spend winter break catching up on the sleep that you unfortunately lost during the fall, and hanging out with your friends and family as much as possible. But like Jake said again, what if you spent a couple of those days in Dallas at SMC? SMC is StuMo's 4-day winter conference focused on growing in leadership and faith alongside thousands of students just like you and I. The president of my sorority convinced me to go freshman year, and within those 3 or 4 days, my life truly changed. I made the decision to follow Christ, met my very best friends, and learned how to have a personal relationship with God. Not to mention a rave, ice skating, and lots of hotel room belly laughs. If you want conversations that go beyond what's your year, what's your major, the chance to be SEC schools in basketball, hype me up. Some of the best, maybe even funniest memories of college like I got. I want to ask you to come with me this January. Going to SMC my freshman year was an investment on the rest of college and ultimately the rest of my life. Before January, I felt like I was at a dead end, always asking myself that same old question, is this really it? Since then, that question was answered with a statement, this is it. This is what I was made for. I went from Hopi to Olive, guys. Seriously, life change.
Hopi.
SMC changed the trajectory of my college experience and, like I said, ultimately my life. And I know it has the ability to change yours too. So come with it. Thanks.
Yeah, Natalie. Hopi, that's the definitive way to say that. I love that. Thank you, Natalie. SMC is incredible. I hope you guys will join us this winter at that conference. It can really change your life. It's an incredible thing. I want us to just discuss for a couple seconds, man, which one of these risks do you feel like maybe is right for you? So go ahead and get with the people next to you and discuss that for a couple seconds. Man, I hope you guys had some good discussions on maybe like what's one small risk, step of faith, bold thing that you can do to follow Jesus. Man, it's so worth it. It's so worth it. You know, Jesus ends this conversation he's having with Peter in a pretty unique way. And this is what he says. He says, for the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what they've done. What he's telling them is it's true. He's going to come back. He's going to ask, like, what did you do with your time in college? Did you play it safe? Man, did you stay in Hopi and just stay in your comfort zone and, man, embrace that life? Or did you step out and do something bold and live a life that was something you never could have imagined? You know, I'm a pretty safe guy. I don't tend to lean towards taking risks. That's never been my bent in life. My senior year of college, I had just started dating this girl. Her name was Rose. She's awesome. Some of you guys know Rose in this room. She's amazing. And we were on like week 2 of dating, okay? And so week 2 of dating, like you're still trying to put up your best front, right? You're trying to act cool, like brave, you know, do all the things that you don't normally do and that you actually hate. And so we'd just gone on a date, and I had just gone back to my fraternity house. It was late at night. It was probably like 12 a.m., okay? And so I'm sitting there just hanging out with the guys in my fraternity, and Rose calls me. And I'm like, oh, what's going on here? It's pretty late. So I answer. I'm like, what's going on? And she goes, hey, do you want to climb Old Main with me? And I was like, of course I do. That sounds amazing. Even though, like, in the back of my mind, like, that sounds like a terrible idea. And so she's like, okay, get your roommate. My roommate's name was Shane, and she had one of her best friends with her, and she picked us up at the house, and she drove us over to Old Main. And Old Main's not like this small building. Like here, like it's 7 stories at my university. It's huge. And so, I'm still trying to act tough. I'm still trying to be that brave guy. And so I walk up like the main steps up to the front, like check the front door like really boldly. I'm like, guys, it's locked. We got to go home. And so I start walking away. They're like, no. We found like the secret passageway into Old Main. I'm like, well, isn't that illegal? They're like, what are you talking about? Let's just go. And I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. And so we go down to that entranceway. We go, and it's clearly not an entrance we're supposed to be going through. We get in there, and then we start going up the steps, right? And we get up the first floor. I'm like starting to get nervous. I'm really afraid of heights. And so we get to the 3rd floor. I'm like, this is a terrible idea. We get to the 7th floor, and I'm like, guys, I gotta go back down. I can't do this. I'm losing my cool in front of my new girlfriend. It's not good. And so they're like, Jake, you're fine, let's keep going. I'm like, okay, all right, let's go. And so we walk up one more flight of stairs, and there's this door. It says, do not enter. And we go through it, right? We go through it. We step over to the thing that's blocking it, we go through it, and then we're in the attic. And the attic has these beams that are ancient. Like this thing was built in the 1800s. And I'm talking like 70 to 80 foot free fall if you go through the drywall of the ceiling. Like it's not like a small fall. But we're working our way across these things. I have terrible balance, but I'm trying to act cool. This is what you do for love, right? Walking across these beams, trying not to die. We get to the other end of the attic, and there's this small little animal hole that you have to go through. And I'm like, guys, this is a terrible idea. This is a huge risk. I shouldn't be doing this. And they all start going through, and I'm like, okay, I guess I got to follow. And so we go through the little hole, then it leads to this tower, and there's like these ancient ladders that you have to climb. And they're definitely not built for a guy my size. Like, I'm stepping on each one, like I'm hearing them actually creak. I'm like, guys, we got to do this. Too risky. Let's cut it now. Let's save our lives. We keep going. We get to the top. And here's a picture of it right here. That's me. It's not a good look. I recognize that. I'm actually sitting on the entrance to the roof. Like, I'm not letting go of the entrance right there. I'm terrified. But what you can't see is like, it was amazing. Man, we got up to the top of Old Main. It was one of the best views, one of the coolest experiences, one of the biggest adventures I'd ever experienced in my life. There was risk. There were times where I wanted to go back. There were times where I wanted to play it safe, but if I would have done those things, I would have never gotten to experience something as incredible as this. Following Jesus is so much more rewarding than that. Infinitely, amazingly, more amazing than that. Don't let the risk scare you away from something so incredible. Risk for Jesus and get the reward. Thanks, guys.